o'clock. I'd like to call the September 21st, 2021 board meeting to order. Walter, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This evening we do have two trustees on the line. They are attending remotely due to family illness. Do I have any objections from the board for them attending remotely? No? Hearing none. Allison, can I have roll call, please?
Trustee White.
Here.
Trustee Lendy. Here. Trustee Heron.
Here.
Trustee Bonnie.
Here.
Trustee Shonas.
Here.
Trustee Walter.
Here.
President Moore.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you all. Under public hearings this evening, we have an establishment of an SSA number 28 for Rosewood Farm. Walter?
The purpose of the public hearing is to put everybody on notice, particularly the property owner, that the village intends to establish an SSA on the property for the purpose of, being a backup SSA for the maintenance of the stormwater management facilities that will be constructed on the property.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments? Going once? Going twice? Yes.
What does public comments refer to?
This is just regarding the public hearing for the establishment of the backup SSA for Rosewood Farm. This is a public hearing for that backup SSA.
Okay, I have something else to talk about.
Okay, we'll get to that public comment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking. Any comments regarding the backup SSA for Rosewood Farm? Okay, hearing none, I will close that portion. Under appointments and presentations, we don't have any at this time. Next up is our airport report. Joe? Gonna slide our podium.
The federal government has a program where they subsidize small aviation companies that will create, cover transportation to small cities that the major carriers don't cover. I don't know that COVID Air is taking part in this, but they do subsidize airlines, small airlines, so it's a company that provide this service for small, maybe commuter airlines and things like that. Now, this past week, I guess they didn't call you. They didn't call you. Okay. I did talk to him and say he was going to take them out to Jerry Roach's place for lunch. And he did mention that he spoke to Peter about that, about luncheon. And I thought maybe that would sweeten the pot a little bit. And I also said that you and I had met with Steve at the airport, and we talked about the possibility of the Sugar Grove helping to fund the sewer line. And I said, you would like to meet with him. And he said that would be great. I'll call her in the next couple of days. Now, he was in a meeting in Council Bluffs. Peter is the president, but he is the chairman. He's the CEO.
Got it.
So he's busy flying around, putting these companies that Peter bought together into one company. So he's busy. He will meet with you, whatever it takes. How well do you love your house?
That's next. I thought the kids were next, Joe.
Well, I'm working now.
Mr. Wolf is making promises in order to get meetings.
But anyhow, Peter and Inga have been married for 10 years. So, but they have the money to do this, and, so it's going to take some time. They want to be into flight training. They are in several other cities, and you're going to have flight training here. And commuter service here, but I don't know to where. Maybe just the other airports that they own. So I don't know. But they are, he is working on it. And the other player in this, probably that's been somewhat involved, is probably Jim Armberg. He owns ATMI. That's a company that makes these cement walls for these warehouses and things like that. And he's president of the airport board here that I'm on. And since he's been on, his goal is to get somebody to move in and buy up these two companies and create one company that can really grow the airport in a profitable manner. So some say he's been involved in it, and others say it's not so much. So I don't know, but he's been trying for years to do this, and I think he's had some hand in it. Now, the guy is also on our airport board. He's been on it for years. He's an engineer. He's been an engineer for the Sugar Grove Airport, for our airport, and the various other airports around the state. So that's his background as an engineer. And how he got to this position, I don't know. Everybody knows how it goes. So I probably know him the least, but he takes my calls. so that's all. But I'm trying to get him to talk to you.
Have you had they have a scheduled board meeting as of yet?
There may not be any board meetings this year.
Okay.
I talked to Amy this week, and she said that the Roar Mayor has not put any committees together yet, and she thinks probably December might be the earliest, maybe not this year. But I talk to Amy on a regular basis and things like that. I'll say that Aurora owns the airport, but Sugar Grove has an airport. And, you're going to get all the crap, I'll say. You're going to get the noise and the pollution. And if you do some things right, maybe you can get something out of it. Maybe you can make some money out of it somehow. I would really consider that, as over the years this is going to grow and it's going to create problems. And if you can have a say in influence, it will help you. And one of the ways is if you could negotiate some type of sewer arrangement, and that at the same time, the Honda area would be developed with, say, a 20-year payback, that you had your money in. It would take some negotiation skills, but it could be possible to look into it because you have to get some benefit out of this airport in the long run. And unless you work at it and take some chances, it won't happen. The Aurora mayor, Jim Ambrose, everybody wants this thing to boom. They're all working to make it boom. It's just a matter of making it happen. So I'm just saying, this in the next year or two probably be the best opportunity to make things happen. I know Jim well. My son works with Jim as an engineer, so maybe I recommend him too much, but he may have some influence in what happens here. So there's a lot of players, and I urge you to consider it.
Thank you.
I guess that's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Joe regarding the airport or anything he can bring back at this point?
I will, in the next couple of weeks, I'll talk about it. Evidently, he's not going to call you, but he's been my phone.
I'll try him again. We'll try him again. We'll see what happens. But thank you for facilitating. What's that? Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, next up, we do have public comment number 1. And under this public comment, this is items scheduled for action. So this evening, we have on the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes from September 2nd, 2021 Village Board meeting, approval of the minutes of the August 16th, 2021 Town Center meeting, approval of the treasurer's report, approval of the vouchers, resolution authorizing an IML conference attendance, an ordinance declaring a surplus property for 4 squad cars, a resolution authorizing the purchase of 4 replacement police vehicles, a resolution transferring fund balances, a resolution authorizing a professional services agreement for bridge inspections. Do we have any public comments at this time for items scheduled for action? We do not have any general business items, so it would just be for those items at this time. Okay, hearing none. Do I have any board members that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
So moved.
Okay. I have a first out of Trustee Heron and a second out of Trustee Bonnie. Allison, roll call, please.
Trustee Heron.
Aye.
Trustee Bonnie.
Aye.
Trustee Lindy. Aye. Trustee White.
Aye.
Trustee Walter.
Aye.
Trustee Shonus.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Motion passes. We do not have any items scheduled for general business, and now we have another public comment on items set up for discussion, scheduled for discussion. So first we have a special use fence and screening variation for 6 Main Street. We have wastewater system master plan. We have the animal control regulations and the priority capital projects list. Are there any public comments at this time for any items for discussion or anything in general that might not be on the agenda this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Jack Saltis. I live in Windsor West, and I've been getting negative feedback from the homeowner association. Recently, we've been parking 3 cars across on our driveway, so it's 3 and 3. And we're able to do that because I have brick pavers on either side of the driveway. And one night, my daughter had one wheel that was off the brick driveway. Because neighbors complained to the homeowner association, they contacted the police department, and we were given a ticket because one wheel was off. My wife had been talking to the president of the homeowner association, and he initially said that I wasn't properly permitted for the bricks along my driveway. And that brings up another situation, because I went to the building department, and they said, yes, I was permitted to have bricks on either side. I had submitted originally a permit to have bricks all the way to the road. So I also have bricks between the sidewalk and the road. And he said, those aren't permitted. My situation is, when I went to have my patio and brickwork approved, a building inspector back in 2007 said those bricks cannot be between the sidewalk and the road. I went to the city, talked to someone in the building department. He said he was going to have that ordinance changed so people could put bricks between the sidewalk and the road. I go around my neighborhood, there's numerous, well not numerous, at least a half dozen people that actually have bricks between the sidewalk and the road. So I haven't gotten any letters from the city demanding that those bricks should be taken out, but allegedly they're not permitted, even though I once was told, and I was told that someone had went to the city, someone, maybe the department, and he said he had changed it. The person at the zoning department said he couldn't see anything where that ordinance had been changed. I myself did get a ticket because I was parking a car between the sidewalk and the road, and I was parking it diagonally, and I had overstepped into the grass. I was cited a ticket. The police chief did tear it up. He said, don't do it again. And I haven't done that again. But because I have a neighbor who kind of passed, I don't know who this person is, he noticed one day my daughter had a tire that was off the brake, and we were ticketed. So I was wondering what could be done concerning that ticket.
So do you have, I guess my first question would be, do you have an HOA that overrides the rules of the municipality, first of all? Like, do you have, I know my HOA has a rule about how many cars can be parked in that driveway.
No, there's no rule. We talked to the, what do you call it,
The HOA?
HOA. He said, no, there's not. He said the only rule is if it becomes a nuisance where enough neighbors complain about it, then they could ticket me. But so far, there's supposedly only one person that had complained. The reason we have so many cars is I have 4 daughters, just gained one recently, kind of adopted one, 18-year-old. She was an orphan, moved to Arizona with her grandmother. She's 18, she decided to come back to Sugar Grove and live with us. So she lived with us. So we have 4 daughters, we have myself and my wife, 6 cars, and then from time to time we have neighbors, I shouldn't say neighbors, friends of my daughters that will park diagonally or on the street. They called up the police department. Oh, that reminds me of another story. My daughter had her boyfriend parked on the street. He forgot to call out the police department. He was ticketed. My daughter went to the police department, I think she said February 22nd, went to the police department, paid it in cash, but then several weeks later or a month later, they got a notice saying the ticket hadn't been paid. So the boyfriend, he's like, threw up his hand, just went back to the police department and paid it again. I'm just wondering, is there any tape from that day that would show that my daughter actually went in to the police department and paid a fine, but then was later told she hadn't paid the fine?
I don't know the answer to that. But what I would, Chief, if you have any comments to add, but I also want to make a comment that what were the purpose of our meeting tonight is obviously to hear you and get to the resolution. But I'm in my brain going, so seldom do we have public comment that I'm not focused on the fact that we have a 3-minute time frame for public comment. So this evening for public comment, because I did not cut Mr. Feltus off, if you want to speak beyond 3 minutes, I'm happy to have somebody speak beyond 3 minutes. But that's my fault. I dropped the ball on that. It sounds like, Mr. Feltus, we're going to have to do a little bit of research on this particular situation, because this is the first the board is hearing of it. So I don't know, Chief, unless you want to, I don't want to catch you off guard. If you have anything to add on this particular topic, but I would love to follow up with Mr. Feltus on this.
I'd like to look into it. I know if there's something that happened on February 22nd, there is no video. However, when we receive cash, we typically provide the person paying cash for receipts.
And my daughter said she was never given a receipt.
That's off the CEO's working on that day, and you and I can sit down.
Okay,
And
let me make-
this is the first time I'm hearing about.
Okay.
This nature has never been brought forward in the past.
And let me double check to make sure that's the proper date, because my daughter, the same day, went down and paid the ticket. I'm not 100% sure if it was February 22nd. This is what I remember. She told me this a week ago. So anyway, so from my point of view, my ticket, or the most recent ticket where one wheel was off the brick driveway, and I'm not sure if I said this, but initially the homeowner or the president said you weren't permitted for those bricks, but later backed off because he had contacted the building department said I did have a permit for my bricks along the driveway.
Okay.
So from my point of view, let's just call it even between my daughter saying she paid $25 and I got a ticket because the neighbor didn't like the fact. Right now we only have 4 cars in the driveway because, you know, a couple of my daughters, they have boyfriends, they don't stay at home all the time, very different reasons. So we're basically down to 4 to 5 cars. The reason we don't use the garage is I have a small business, it's beekeeping. And I keep equipment in there on one side, the other side I'm using it for like the work area. During the winter I can get a car in the driveway right now, it's a work area, and that's another point. Bees aren't permitted in the city of Sugar Grove. There's other communities around us that do permit bees. Yorkville for one, and I'm just wondering if the city could look into whether or not it would change the ordinance to permit people to have beehives. They could copy what Yorkville is doing. And I think I read the big mission statement where the city of Sugar Grove, they want to be environmentally friendly and progressive of that nature. So in a sense, to say you can't have beehives on your property, but then you have a mission statement that talks about being environmentally friendly, it's a contradiction. So I'm wondering if the city can look at that. I brought this up maybe 4 years ago, and they said, well, we looked into it like 5 years earlier, and we said no. Well, now there are more cities surrounding us that do permit it. If you don't have check-ins around, you can let bees around. And bees are around no matter what. They're there. It's just that you can't a person put a hive or 2 on your property.
Mr.
So yes,
Feltus,
I will get back to the police chief
please do.
about the exact date where my daughter, and we can discuss that ticket where I was, you know, we are now stressing to everybody in the family be on the bricks. So I don't think, even though we have 6 cars, and that's not all the time, we want to. Oh, another thing is, I was at a homeowner association Zoom meeting, and they were saying that I had ruts along my driveway. I went to the building department and talked to a guy named Chris. He had some pictures. He said, there's no ruts along your driveway. So the HMO, they were mischaracterizing my situation at that meeting. And I'm not sure if they've taken their complaints to you. And if they have, it's being mischaracterized.
They have not. Just to give you solace in that, they have not taken that to the village, so.
So that's one of the reasons I'm here.
Yeah, no, and I greatly appreciate your comments and taking time to come to our board meeting this evening and giving us a little bit of information about your situation. Chief will follow up with you regarding payment of ticket or what that looks like. We will, I will get with staff regarding beekeeping, see where we've come in regards to that, look at what other municipalities are doing, but it sounds like that covers the cuspit of what your concerns may be this evening.
Thank you very much for extending over the time. Wasn't aware of the 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have a 3 minute, that's my fault, I apologize, so, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
We don't issue tickets on private property if they're off the driveway, do we?
Yes,
We do.
yes, we do.
So if somebody pulls into their, parks on their front yard, we give them a ticket.
Correct.
Yeah, you can't park on the lawn.
My situation was just one wheel well off the
A
brake.
tire, it sounds like, but,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comments at this time, please?
I'm Kelly McCurdy. My daughter is actually friends with his daughter and highly Glenn.
Okay.
And she can vouch for everything he just said.
Okay.
She got a ticket at his house. So it does happen. So I'm just letting you know. I'm here actually regarding the dog parking. I personally have 3 big dogs, and I just wondered which kind of answer that I'm going to bring up. How many complaints really is there in Sugar Grove? And with the pandemic, a lot of people are home. I understand that. We're here doing school, we're here in quarantine, we're here working, and things like that. So when this complaint was, compared to what's going on like all summer long, when everybody's home and everyone's loud, things like that, people are doing Zoom. I believe the complaint was during a Zoom call, and it actually made the Chicago Tribune, which is very slow news day, I guess. So, especially for Sugar Grove, complaints in Sugar Grove. So how can we become a better community, working together, and not complaining about little peon things, like going on a party? I mean, really, what is this Sugar Grove? What is our community turning into? Because I feel we can do better. We can work better together, and instead of promoting dogs barking, whatever, cats pooping on my lawn, why can't people talk and be neighborly? You know, I mean, seriously, it's getting worse and worse, and you know, we're in doom and gloom all the time. And I feel that we can be more positive, proactive, and work together. Instead of, you get $250 fine because your dog's bark for, up, there, at 3 minutes. Oh my goodness, you know. So most people have Ring cameras, like I do. So my dogs, when they go out, they're on time. They're timed. Because I don't want to upset my backyard neighbor who doesn't like dogs. Her husband said, my dogs are not the problem. Okay, that's fine, but I'm still going to be nice and try to get them in as soon as possible. And I'm actually out there with my dogs constantly. It's on the Ring camera, thank goodness, for the Ring. So it's timed. It'll say the time I go out with them, I'm still out there on the patio, time that they come in. Now, if bunnies come, someone riding a bike, or someone walking by, dogs do bark. It is a natural thing, especially when I have 3 dogs that pack together. But as soon as I can, I bring them inside. They are never constantly barking. Now, if we can just do that, work as a community and do that together, I don't understand why we have to nitpick and have something in the paper to bring attention to Sugar Grove about dogs barking. I don't know. I mean, we have the dogs, it's just me and my kids. So we feel very safe with our dogs, and it just is what it is. So it's just me, and it's for safety, and it's for, you know, help with my kids for losing my dad. So it's just me.
We appreciate your comments. The board will discuss it, so you'll have discussion shortly on that particular item. But we take your comments to heart. We appreciate you coming to the board meeting this evening. Do we have any additional public comments this evening? Yes,
I just kind of to segue off of that, I think like the wording in the ordinance that we're talking about tonight is pretty harsh. And like she said, with the complaint that was registered, I believe that it was her dog and my dog. Together, we're talking to each other. but basically nothing was ever brought to my attention. I have a puppy, and I'm working with him on his barking. But I find now that he goes out and he starts to bark, and I'm in a panic. Like, oh my God, he's barking. You know, I have to get the bark counter buzzer thing to buzz him so he stops barking. And yeah, so like the sense of community and just can we be neighborly and not have to go that route where we can't talk to each other and we have to, you know, call the police and file complaints and then find out because you have an article written about you in the newspaper. So
I'm just curious, I do want to understand. So no one commented, no one came to you and
No.
said, can you bring your dogs inside?
no, never.
That was never addressed.
Never addressed.
Ever.
She came to my house one day and told me what was going on, and I looked in the paper, and I'm like, you know, it said that she had tried to work it out with us. She's never said one word to me or to her about it.
I'm not asking who you are or where you live, but at the previous meetings when this was brought up, the complaint that was discussed would not be your situation at all.
Yeah.
It was not two dogs in two separate
So
homes.
we're
It was
talking
one
about-
home, it was a person with multiple dogs on each side of them.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's your situation or not, but it wasn't,
It sounds similar,
In
yes.
corner.
Yeah.
well, that's, I don't.
Yeah, we have
yeah.
dogs on, so it was like 6 dogs in essence in a backyard or something
So,
like that.
I'm just saying, don't make the assumption
Yeah.
that it is your neighbor that's complaining to the
Yeah.
village. I don't know if it is or isn't.
Yeah.
And it's not we get complaints about dogs.
Okay.
I mean, so, yeah, maybe it was about you, maybe it wasn't, I have no
And
idea.
I'm standing up for whoever it was because you're not my neighbor.
We're all dog owners.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm a dog owner, I think a lot of the board members
I
are.
think we just could be better, right? I mean, come on, we all can.
And there are situations where, you know, ordinances are written so that you're not arguing with your neighbors, and, you know, sometimes you can't mediate a situation, and so we're trying to find the best solution
Right.
for all, especially our residents that have to deal with it. I have a dog too, so we look at this, you know, personally as well. But thank you for your comment.
And
Yes.
I think when we come up with what are these like animal control issues? There are some, if I remember correctly, there are some that haven't been updated in 40 years. There are some that never existed, and so sometimes there is no language. Sometimes the language is very outdated, and so with some of this stuff, we're just trying to keep up with the times. I'm not saying this. I don't remember. I think this one, the language we're trying to change, but with some of it too, like a few years ago we had someone that was attacked by an elk, and we didn't have anything to support protecting that person from an unleashed animal. And so it's not always an attack. Sometimes we're just trying to catch up with ordinances.
It was just about an article in Chicago Tribune about Sharon Grove dogs
Yeah.
barking, which is kind of weird.
It wasn't like News Day.
Okay.
It wasn't like News Day.
Right.
Yeah.
We got a first timer.
Yep. All right, well, thank you. Like I said, any additional comments from the public at this time? Hearing none, we will close that portion. First item up for discussion is the special use fence and screening variation for 6 Main Street. Walter?
Okay, suffice it to say, this is a complicated case. The applicant applied for a special use permit to operate a rental business on the property, and the business is involved with the rental of storage containers, the small household size that are technically referred to as a 1 TU unit. These are basically half the length of a semi-trailer truck. And you know, they're not uncommon. You know, we've seen, you know, these kind of containers in people's driveways throughout the community over the years. But in connection with the special use permit request, the applicant also needed to get a zoning variation as it relates to the fence that's required around outdoor storage, and specifically with the location of the property, one section of the fence would be the required front yard, so the fence height exceeds that height, and because of the zoning district, the maximum height of the fence is 6 feet, but the storage containers are 8 feet in height, and so we need an amendment to allow a taller fence. And lastly, it wasn't specifically requested by the applicant, but we initiated a zoning text amendment to address whether it was an oversight or what, but there's a conflict in the regulations as it relates to the type of fence that can be used for outdoor storage. The requirement is it has to be a solid fence. Well, that's all well and fine, but we also permit privacy slats and fabric mesh screening material on chain link fences if they're not screening outdoor storage. So why not permit them for outdoor storage? So that's the text amendment that's being promoted here, proposed here, along with the special use permit application. So that, in a nutshell, is what's before you. But there's a couple of details I want to address. One is the matter of defining or prescribing what fence material is appropriate for outdoor storage. As I indicated in the board report, the amendment was proposed to be a small geographic area that would accommodate the applicant's property. At the Plan Commission public hearing, the Plan Commission discussed whether or not that should be global. Not define it to a specific area, but just make it apply globally in all the commercial industrial zoning districts. I thought that was the direction the Plan Commission was going. That wasn't in their recommendation. So I'm suggesting that if the board is comfortable with the amendment, staff is supportive of making it a global change rather than a specific small geographic area. Because in the end, it's probably going to be confusing to not only staff, but also the public as well. See, I mentioned the variations. Also, because of the characteristics of the property, and I probably should have began my comments with a description of the property where it's located. If you haven't been out there, it's at the very end of Main Street at the north end. Main Street dead ends into the right of way of US 30, and the applicant's property is located on the east side of Main Street. There is a parcel of land that IDOT owns between Route 30 and the applicant's property that the applicant has a valid lease with IDOT to occupy their lot and use it for parking and outdoor storage. But in order to have outdoor storage on the property, it needs to be screened for view. So we need to put a fence up there, and village staff recommended that there be a fence placed along Main Street to screen the yard from passers-by on Main Street, as well as the neighbors on the opposite side. There's also a desire to have a fence on the east side of the building towards Route 47. The staff is recommending that it begin at the northeast corner of the building and go diagonally to Route 47, following the applicant's property line. The applicant would prefer to do something different, but that would require putting the fence in the IDOT right of way. And in the board packet, there's a detailed property ownership around the applicant's property. You can see it's very complicated with the right-of-way for Route 47 at the ramps and US 30 is all over the place. Then you have the IDOT parcel that they own out, that's not part of the right-of-way, the applicant's property, and the other property to the south of them. The Plan Commission discussed the location of the fence at great length, and in the end, concurred with the staff recommendation, and that was part of their recommendation to the board. And as far as the special use permit is concerned, there generally wasn't a lot of concern or issues that the Plan Commission had with the business itself. They recognize that there are potential undesirable effects of the storage containers on the property, so they wanted it screened. They prohibited the storage containers from being stacked on the property, and they placed a limit of 8 containers on the property, which is significantly lower than what the applicant was requesting. Went up to as many as 14 on the property, and the other condition was that the storage containers had to be behind the fence. So
what?
Had to be behind the fence.
Behind the fence.
Oh, and one more thing about the fence I forgot to mention. At the north end of the IDOT property that the applicant leases is the ramp from eastbound 30 to southbound 47. And if you've traveled it, it's elevated. And village staff was of the position that an 8-foot fence is not going to screen the property from the ramp. And it's, I think, unreasonable to expect somebody to construct a fence or a wall that high to screen as you're traveling down the ramp at that speed. You got a very small window of opportunity to see the property, and so we're of the opinion that requiring screening at that particular location is probably not necessary. And the Plan Commission agreed with that. The applicant's here to answer any specific questions, but I think I covered all of the main points for the board, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. We'll move right into discussion. Any board member, and I know Brian and Mike are still with us, but does anybody have any discussion? First it's kind of all encompassing. We have multiple things going on here, but we have the special use, we have the fence, in the text amendment, but those are the few things we're working on. So, open for discussion. Go ahead, Trustee White.
First of all, with regard to the local use for chain link, I think my opinion would be for M1 maybe, but I don't think I'd want to see that in the B districts. I think here it's appropriate. I kind of look at the use as more of an M1 use in the B3 district. So I'm okay with how you defined it here. But I don't think I want to see, Jewel putting up a multicolored, multi-slab, we get too much opportunity to have it looking like a circus, I think. We can't really control the color of the slabs and stuff like that. So maybe I would say in the M1 district, like the way it is, back on Heartland Drive, where they've already got these already in place. That to me, I'd be okay with from that standpoint. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts on it. Those are mine. With regard to the location of the fences, I would not be comfortable approving a fence in the right of way. I don't think it's our place to do that. I like the way you've got the B fence there, it's all within the property or the leased property. I don't like the A fence. I took a drive around there quite a few times yesterday. I talked to some of the neighbors, and I went up to the neighbor right across the street and talked to them, and then saw the neighbor kitty corner who was out jogging, who I know out there, and talked to them. They don't have a problem with the fence coming out there. But my biggest issue was when I was driving down Main Street, headed north, I didn't want to see that fence jutting out at the end of the street. I would rather see that fence just extend straight off the building north. Right along the back of that trailer, the semi-trailer that's sitting there, and just head straight north there. And then that would leave an area where they'd be able to park cars, outside the fenced area. If they're fencing in, I don't really care about the number of them that they'll have there, as long as they're all within the fence, and as long as they can move around and do what they have to do to conduct their business. I don't think we go into somebody's indoor shop and say, hey, you can only have this many inside. So I don't think we should limit the number outside if they can make them work. The way they locate them, I'm okay with that. And if we need language that says, that it'll be, allowed for proper use of the property and the functionality of it, so that that's something that we can come back later and say, hey, it's not working this way, and we have something there. But as for not having fence along the other areas, as we talked a little bit about today, our ordinances don't allow us to grant variance like that at this point. But I think our ordinances do allow us to use burning and other vegetation as that buffer or as the screening. And I certainly think that the ramp certainly would apply as a buffer or as burning from that perspective, so that we're not violating our own ordinances by approving it. And then, but I mean, from my perspective, quite honestly, the biggest thing to me was having that fence just go straight off north from the building as opposed to coming out into the to the right of way line. No, the gate fence. Straight, just straight north from the building there. Well, it is, but they've also got, they also need places to park vehicles. Right now, they're parked in the right of the way, and they would be able to put cars there too, and use it as storage for what they need to storage it. So what I'm talking about is just straight north.
What is this white part here? That's part of the building, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I think it is. I think it's part of the
Walter,
office.
straight up your area.
So I'm actually talking about where
You're going straight off of this
I'm going
structure.
straight off of that.
Off of that line.
Main part of the building there.
Jamie's suggesting where it starts off the building, just continuing it northbound instead of having it jet to the west and then back north. But I'm curious what this other structure in the front, in the aerial, I assume it's part of the building. From being in there, I think it's the office.
It's the office. Okay. So is the bigger building the shop?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm talking about from the shop. That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have additional comments? Jamie, I'm sorry. Or do you have additional?
No, I think that covers it for me. Thank you.
Okay.
I agree with Jamie with the fencing and the D. I don't want the rules.
Heidi, I'm sorry.
I don't have the global use of the chain link in that.
Okay.
I agree with Jamie with what you're saying. I don't think we should put a fence in the right of way. That's not our place to allow. I agree with ramp that work is running in the back. I think that is accurate. I would not recommend the C at all. E's okay, the A, I think we can put it in, Sean, I don't know. And go to the office wall or all the way in, so I'm not sure either one. I don't think which name.
Okay, can I go, do you have anything to add?
Yeah.
Okay, go, please do.
My only thing with it is, C. I like the fencing B, of course, is a much better location than C because of all the rules or all the things that have already been stated. I, however, differ just a little bit on that A. I think fencing over there that blocks the view of any cars or anything that's going to be in that lot is an overall improvement when you're in that area. It'll actually block the view of all of that, and I think that's what they're trying to do in the long term is block the public view of that area. There was none of the neighbors that really care about the placing of A. Then I don't really see an issue with A. That's my only issue. My only thing I wanted to bring up. So.
Yeah, they didn't know where the fence was gonna go.
Uh-huh.
They didn't mind having a fence there. In fact, they didn't mind the way it was done. That's why I thought, well, I guess if they don't mind. But it was just when I was coming down Main Street, and it's all the other people that go that way too.
Sure.
That I was thinking about, that thing sticking out. Because it's 8 feet, it's like another building.
Right.
And that's why I thought.
Well, cars are parked there now. I mean, in the future, the cars that are parked there now, are their plan is to move those cars within the fenced-in area?
Dan, if we could get your attention real fast. Trustee Bonnie had a question.
The vehicles that are parked now on the right side of that A line, those vehicles, your whole intention is to move everything inside and shield everything from public view with that fencing, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything. Cars, whether that or the stores.
Right. So any storage unit, any things that you're storing in that area, you want fenced in?
Yes. We would be, I'm speaking out of turn, but Walter would see that would be with us, and we would agree to put this across here. From where?
From the main building, from
On the main building to the north of that, we would put across here, because we're losing, not our, but what it would give us, excuse me, like the gentleman said, it would give a very good obstructions where people couldn't see all the cars and stuff. There would have to be a gate here, because that's right away for the state, so they have to have the ability to get in for the state. That is their problem.
So, man, if they were gonna park cars on the outside of the fence, they would have to pave that area and strike it.
Correct.
So it'd be just like a regular parking lot.
They're storing vehicles for storage there, though. It's not like my car being parked there to go visit business. It's like me parking my 79 Corvette for storage to be parked there.
It's more that when their business is operating and you've had auto body work done or whatever, oil change, and you're coming back to get your vehicle, it's a holding place.
That's where they're gonna hold.
That's where they're holding the vehicle.
Yeah, once they use it for storage, it's gotta be either a parking spot or behind the fence.
Okay, thank you.
And Sean, do you have any comments?
If there's a lot of storage there, I don't mind it being a little bit further to the west. To keep the neighbors currently might not mind, neighbors in the future may mind. It's out of sight, out of mind if it's behind the fence, and I think it's a cleaner look, in my opinion.
So you think off the edge of the office then, instead of the building?
If that can keep everything off of right where the A is currently, and there's all those cars parked at the end of Main Street, if it can keep that within, or keep more of as much of that within as possible, I think that would be, moving forward, I think that would be a cleaner look.
I think the problem that we're having a little bit is the business is leaching outside of the property line, right? I mean,
Well, that's a.
We're in the street.
Right? The cars in the
But
street.
we don't want to get into that situation where we're now sending code enforcement over the business, right? We don't want to go down that road. But I think that's part of the situation right now that we're trying to grapple with, to make you a little bit more in a box, if you will.
I'd be okay doing it off the corner of the office. It'll give you more space back there.
I guess my question would be, is that okay? Is that, when I draw my line, and I don't have a ruler, but when I draw my line off the corner of that business, you create a space, just like there is a space created in the road, you create a space for parking outside of the fenced area. And that area, per the village ordinance, would have to be paved and striped. Is that my understanding?
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding.
Correct.
So to me, the little bit of the history of this, because I don't know that we got into that for the board, is that the business owner is to pave and stripe the parking lot for parking, but they don't utilize that parking lot for their customers. It is like a storage yard, if you will, and to alleviate them from paving and striping a property that they don't own, in creating a storage yard, in order to create the storage yard, you create the fence. Now if you can separate this in your brain from the special use of the storage containers for a moment and look at why the fence is being placed there and what we're trying to accomplish with the fence, and then we can look at, and because the variance of the 6 feet to the 8 feet is to accommodate the storage containers at 8 feet high. So there's two separate things going on here, but I feel like I don't necessarily disagree with what your comments are, Jamie, but I think that long term it would just create a space on the outside of the fence for parking.
Well, then we can, as part of the special use, not bring the parking outside the fence.
Ooh, you can, but
If we move it to the edge of the office, then that space isn't big enough for parking spaces.
yeah, I got 1.5 cars there. Because basically they're stacking cars.
Right, and that's what
They're gonna just stack them for their customers to come pick them up. So they're gonna just stage them in a single file, I would assume, on the outside of the fence.
not for pickup, because the guy in the back can't get his car.
Well, they got staff there.
And is that area paved currently, Walter, or no? No. They'd have to pave it if they were gonna use
Right.
it for parking.
So
Right.
you-
And I'm guessing, I don't know, Walter, if it's a parking area, would it have to have a drive aisle to be the parking lot code?
So then you have to set it all the way back in order to do that.
So that's originally why I said that the corner of the building,
give you
then
room.
we'll give you enough room to actually do it, parking spaces there, we got it. But if you want to move it off the office, then we, as part of the special use, we have to say no parking along that area outside the fence, because there's not a legal space there.
Well, the other problem is,
Then they wouldn't have to pay it, because it wouldn't be a parking.
For coding purposes, is there a difference between parking and staging? Will those cars be staged to move, or is there a difference?
Well,
The staging seems more temporary, and this seems like staged car would be, staged, ready to go would be soon.
really the only differentiation the zoning ordinance makes is between parking and storage. And I forget the time was, but don't hold me to this, but I think it's 72 hours. So if it's parked there for more than 72 hours, it's considered storage.
But if it's parked, it requires a space.
Right. The reason the fence was proposed at location A was to, contain the existing storage area. We're not looking to require the applicant to pave that lot because it would be a storage lot, it would be behind the fence. So that was the whole gist of the proposal with the fence location.
I'm trying to do is just basically maintain the setback.
Oh, no, I understand. Yeah.
Because otherwise it's basically right on the property line.
Right?
Yeah.
We're allowed to put fences, we're allowed to put on property lines. That's the whole idea. And that's why we somewhat came to that compromise along that front.
Are you able to do it at a front elevation?
Well, it's only 3 feet though at the front.
Yeah, the front.
Yeah.
There's a big variation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, it gives it the bulk of another building being there, and basically in front of the setback. So if we're gonna give it the bulk of a building, I'd rather see it at the setback, is what I'm saying.
That creates a problem because you're squeezing down the storage areas. And that's either, plus they don't want to really pave on someone else's property. That's, which is the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois.
Is there room, and I don't know the answer to this question, but when I look at the aerial and I see whatever these are, so I don't know if you all have the exhibit we're looking at, but in the packet, where I see the right of way, and obviously I'm sure there's a drop off back there.
There's a ditch all along that whole.
Okay, so right where these are, I'm assuming these are as far back as you can push them?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That ditch starts.
Okay.
That's a state ditch.
Okay.
That goes all along 46.
Okay, I'm looking for the perfect solution.
No.
Anyone?
Can I walk through a couple things to make sure I understand what's going on?
Please.
Okay, so.
And wait a minute, before you do, Trustee Walter and Shomas, do you have any additional comments on this particular item?
Yeah, I do. Ryan, I don't know if you want to go first, brother. I sure can, I'll be short.
Okay.
I don't, I haven't been able to hear or understand everything that's been said. I don't have any issues with the use, with regards to the storage containers and that. I haven't heard anybody yet say, and maybe I missed it, looking at the map and the applicant desires, a fence at C. Is that been discussed by the board? Is that being a better option than what's being proposed, at least by community development at B?
I think what they were saying is that putting it at C would put the fence in the right of way, and
Okay.
that's not an option.
Okay. That was just one, that's.
But I would agree with you that that would also maybe solve some aesthetic storage.
Yeah, on the sites for a lot of patrons there, I would solve that, but yeah, okay. Otherwise, yeah, I'm following along with that discussion and, trying to understand where we're at. So I'll hand it over to Mike.
Okay, one second. Okay. Mike?
Yeah. So I actually liked a lot of the comments that Jason said, for the reasons that he cited, right? So we've got a business that's done some growth, and a bit of a comparison of riches, if you will, right? Just kind of summarizing what I've heard. That, to my knowledge, we haven't received any complaints from the neighbors, and in fact, Jamie went as far as knocking on doors and talking to people in the area. They don't have any issues today with weather. So we've got a situation that is kind of, based on what I'm hearing, kind of created by us and our own zoning situation. I appreciate the need to hide the stuff that's there, that maybe other people may think is unsightly. I did drive by the location today, gotten out of the house, and I didn't have to worry about physical contact with anyone. I personally would prefer if that fence line at A was moved back. And whether whether or not it's just moved back 5 to 10 feet or all the way back to the corner, I have an opinion on. I think if you're coming down that road, I think the biggest sort of unsightly, for lack of a better word, concern are the cars that are parked on the public road. Like, technically, that's what it is when you get to the apron there at the north point Main Street. So the question that I have along those lines is ultimately for public works. Are the cars that are parked there, does that get in the way of snow removal?
Brad?
Well, we push the snow to that end.
Did you hear that? They push it to the dead end and make a big berm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what the cars are. The cars are parked on that.
Yeah, but they're not,
During the day.
We push it straight to the dead end.
they're not there during the
They've
snowstorm.
been very good, I will say, about having the cars on the way.
Yeah. They're not there, it has not been a problem for public works. The cars are not present when they're doing snow removal.
And you know, I guess it sounded like the comment Jamie made. I'm okay providing some sort of parking variation. I appreciate the need to not pave an area that, you know, they don't own per se. Again, I think I've mentioned that I'm generally a fan of the paving materials that allow for water to flow through. They have a tendency to be a little more short term, and a lot that I've seen kind of lay down piece by piece for whatever it's worth. And you don't have to worry about, you know, extended storms or anything that can stuff down and stuff as well. So maybe that's an option. With respect to the fence in position B versus D, I would think maybe as a negotiation with the business owner, if that fence at A is moved back, then we could loosen up the stance on C versus B for any of the reduction in the parking area or storage area that they would have. But I think if I'm reading the picture correctly, C, what's being proposed is going all the way across, much closer to the on-ramp, instead of ending at the lot dividing line. Is that correct?
yes, that's
what
what
I was asking to extend that east. So if we have over the picture is probably 450 feet. So what I'm saying is, what if instead of it being at B, it's moved to C, but it's only extended back to the lot line? You're still getting the added benefit of hiding most of the stuff that's there that might look unsightly, even though they ain't getting any complaints by the neighbors out there. I think if we allow for parking to be along that grassy way, as long as there's, you know, something there that might be temporary and much less costly, maybe that's a reasonable compromise. So yeah, that's my thought there.
Thank you. Dan?
The overall is that you can't make it any smaller, you understand, and the fence and nothing against any people here, but you know, if A has got a, you know, this is what we looked at, if the problem that I see with A is, or there's no problem with A, we're going to, if we go to, I think, B, B is, that's B. The thing comes down to is we're losing so much space, and it's all owned by the state of Illinois, right away. So the problem is this, unless you put a drive-through lane, it's useless. If it's behind the fence, it won't matter. And I'm not arguing with anybody, but that's the way we look at it.
And And C, to me, is not an option one because it's not on property, so.
It's on the state right away. That's all state right away behind the blue
What
line.
is such a dog yellow?
Yeah, but that's not a property that you lease either. You don't,
No.
you don't run an ordinance there. I said the property that you're talking about losing is property that you don't own or lease.
I believe there's a small amount on the west side of the building that's part of your lot, correct?
Yeah.
And then it goes to the state right away. So I think the village is saying, and I assume it's correct, that the village has no right to approve a fence on state right.
Well, we didn't know, so.
But even still, this fence, their option C, they don't lease or own.
Further, no, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying this whole part of it is their problem.
Right.
If they wanted to fence there.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. This little chat, this is really, these don't line up.
That's
For right now.
I mean, who knows what the house was parcel way back when?
Yeah.
Is the east side of the building paved? Is the east side of the building paved up to a point?
No. East side. There is no pavement on the east side of that building.
So the whole thing is chipped.
It's all chips.
Okay, Brent, if you're ready to summarize.
Well, I'm not trying to summarize it. I'll try to help. So I think, and I don't know if the board's discussed at length, I didn't hear any concerns about the height of the fence making it 8 feet versus 6.
I don't think anybody has a concern. Either of you have a concern about the variance in the height restriction from 6 to 8?
No.
Okay.
And I think based on lack of comment other than mostly what Jamie made, that the idea of chain link at this location is acceptable with the slats. I would look at Walter or Laura to say, I do believe for this we could make them, they have to be a singular color. You know, I appreciate what you were saying, but hey, you know, let's get decorative.
Don't spell out the business on the fence with different colored slats.
Solid color slats. So I think
that's a sign that it's regulated.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I think those, you know, the issue obviously comes down to the exact location of the fence, and then the, you know, the special use for the container rental. You know, which there hasn't been a lot of talk about, but you know, just sitting here, it's kind of like I get it. There's a lot they're trying to do in an area that unfortunately a lot of it is leased. They don't own, they don't control. I think those two to some degree tie together because it's like, okay, if they need to have a certain number of pods on site to run the business, and then that interferes with their other business, I don't know, at some point, I don't really have the pods now. You know, there's only so much that can be accommodated. I think the other point I would make is that I don't know if you start talking about that east side of the building looking at C, at what point the ramp drops down enough that fence actually would start having some value, if you will. But I think C is clearly off the table, just in the state right away. I don't know, I guess I'd ask the question of the board, and it may not make any sense to the petitioner, but yeah, the property that they do own on the east side of the building, if they wanted to fence that in, you know, kind of between B and C along their property line, if that would be acceptable or not.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Like I say, I
It
don't.
makes sense to them, but.
Yeah, it may or may not work for them to put things back there, but, so I think you're really, it sounds to me like you're coming down to this line A. Is it, you know, where the petitioner's proposing it? Is it where, you know, Jamie originally set off the edge of the building, or somewhere between the two? That seems to me to be the issue that we don't have absolute clarity on. I tend to think, I don't mean to put you gentlemen on the spot here tonight, but from a practical viewpoint, I have no idea what you were looking at as far as gates and those locations. And that you'd even, I don't know if you'd even be able to comment tonight based on where that, you know, that A line, if it moves, where it could go and not go, and you could have a gate there to actually make it work.
Plus, the problem is it can't go too much
further east.
It can't go east because there's not enough room between here and here. If you keep moving this line in, that gate gets smaller. You can't get Right now,
Well, unless we take it as a straight line north of the office. Then you've got
that creates,
that whole width that you already have.
I understand that, but the problem is, we don't have enough storage. I mean, that takes a big swipe out of the storage, because this,
You're only talking about taking 10 feet out of it.
oh, you're not, you're talking 10 feet from where, all right, you tell me, maybe you're
He's going up to office building.
Let me show you what we're talking about.
well, the office building is,
You're talking about from here.
this office, checks out here. See this? This is
Talking about this corner here.
Yeah.
And the problem
You're
is,
talking, Jamie, are you talking about what I would call the northwest corner of the office portion?
Yeah.
Correct.
You're
That's what
suggesting to go straight north from there.
Correct.
Because then that gives them exactly as much room as they already have, the width to get in and out. Because you're already coming off the building. And they can do a gate there. And it really looks like it only takes the width of,
You're losing-
one car width.
I see, and I look at it, tell me if I'm wrong, look at my pen mark, it looks like you're cutting through it, 2 cars. Is that what you've done?
Yes.
Right.
So you're losing-
At least we understand the line he's talking
Yeah.
about.
I don't know how you, create more space on the east side with a gate, so that you can operate a gate. You know what I mean? Because if you did fence it off the south corner of the building, and you went eastbound, and then north from there on the property line, those 3 cars that are off the property line, you have no alleyway to drive into the gate.
Well, I don't know their business operations, I think that if they were to do something like that, you're essentially having, I would think for practical effects, 2 separate yards. Because I don't know, like you say, at the corner of the building, if there's a way to really drive through there, I don't know, but I don't know what their operations are. But I mean, it's kind of, whether that space is valuable to them or not, would be somewhat to them, because, as we reiterated, the village can't approve them using ion space.
I think the other thing we're trying to achieve, and it doesn't work on the east side, is containment. And clearly there is a containment concern. So if we're shrinking the size of the lot, you're still gonna have spillover and you're not gonna have containment.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is that we're not going to resolve this tonight without giving the petitioner ample time to review the different ideas that are being thrown out there. I hate to put them on the spot, essentially make a decision on the fly, if you will. Walter, if I understand correctly, any enforcement action is currently on hold, if you will. So I don't know that I don't know that I say if we can work with the petitioner between now and next meeting and come up with something we believe meets what the board is looking for in their interest, we could put it on the next agenda for approval. Obviously, you could discuss it at that time and continue it if you felt you needed to. But I think the other thing that hasn't been talked about, maybe everybody's okay with it, is that special use to run the container rental business out of this site. I think it was the staff recommendation was to approve it with a limit of 8 containers. I think, Jamie, you said you weren't concerned about the number of containers as long as they're stored in the storage yard and they're not stacked. They can do 8 or 10 or 12. At some point, more containers, the less of the other side of the business.
Yeah, I agree with Jamie.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
If it's hidden and they're not stacked.
I think that,
Yeah, same thing, I don't care however many they can get in there, I just don't want to stack on top of each other, and I want them all green.
So no one has a problem with the use, the
I think it's a
special.
great use.
Okay.
I've seen them already in town. I think one thing is that it's a use that's going on there that's not supposed to be already. And so we haven't had the luxury of saying ahead of time, should we even allow this in the first place?
Right.
But that said, I'm okay with it here because, like I said, I kind of look at this end almost as a transition between the B3 and the 180, But I still think we need to try to keep it looking good for our end of the
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, Walter, to be continued with unless Dan or Charlie have any additional comments for the board, we'll direct staff to get back with you and discuss this, and then we can put it on next agenda for approval based on what comes of that meeting.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
I don't know if I switch the order
Yeah, I will do that. Thank you. Okay, next up, we're gonna jump to item C, as we have a patient resident waiting on our discussion on this item. So for Trustee Walter and Showman, we are gonna jump to the animal control regulations. Chief?
Thank you. So, being brought back tonight is a continuation from the July 20th meeting where we discussed public nuisances or basically disturbing the peace. So, as you previously mentioned, the police department only gets a handful of these. The police department only receives a handful of these type of complaints every year, so it's not an enormous amount of calls that we go on to. And most of the time, they are resolved with our presence there or working with the residents. And I know this is still being tracked, as stated by the Tribune, because they already called me this week about this, so they're following it for some reason, and it's just, special interest, and that's okay, because, and everyone, as we all mentioned, have pets, and we understand that as we speak loudly or we speak out, our noise and our verbiage, and as we congregate in areas, the noise travels. So if the animal control ordinance does not have anything that specifically addresses noise, it's in another subsection of the code, which is noise ordinance chapter. So this would be inserted, if it's okay, would be inserted into the animal control ordinance. It would be easy for residents to find in case there's any questions that they can work it out between each other. That's our ultimate goal. If there's an issue, we do want to handle it amongst themselves, and sometimes they can. So we get involved and we mediate it. The issue that took place did earlier, and it's it's not uncommon, and I appreciate coming to the village board. I think we had a conversation on the phone earlier. It was not your neighborhood, and I know I explained that to you. Unless you live adjacent to here to the village hall, that was one of the original complaints that started this, and we went back and we looked at the language that was in place, and we just need substantive language in case it ever doesn't make its way in front of a judge, that a judge would have an easier decision to rule on. And that's the whole purpose, as Trustee Heron said, the language that is currently there is ambiguous. It could use some uplift, a little bit more of a housekeeping. So a number of options were presented at the July 20th meeting. The consensus was to look at combining or hybriding two of the options, and that's what's presented here tonight for discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief. Trustee White?
Chief, is there what's the penalty? Is there like another section that tells you the penalty? If somebody gets a ticket, what's
It is it might be $75 or $100.
Is there any progressiveness to this? Is there like 2 warnings and then you're hit or anything like that?
No, we typically will not issue someone a citation. We'll try to work it out and just warn them. So unless it's just so blatant that they're not going to do anything or it's continuous, then yes, then we'll have to issue citation.
Yeah, there's a level of discretion involved. I don't think if we enact this ordinance, that doesn't mean that the police necessarily have to go out and every time something happens to issue a citation or officials coming into the citation. And I think I have to look at the code, but typically there is a schedule, that would be published that would say for certain types of violations, some are progressive, some aren't. So I have to see how this fits in. Code be specified. But yeah, this certainly would not mean that the police's hands were tied and they had no ability to look at what was happening prior to issuing a ticket.
So they do have discretion to tell the homeowner, no, I'm not going to do it.
Just like they do with anything. The police.
Even if you want to sign a complaint, I'm not going to do it. They maybe that they do.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So even if it's up to us to actually issue the citation and we just check it, it's $100.
And Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but currently under the current ordinance, now underneath the noise ordinance, you can still issue a citation for a dog barking.
Correct.
This isn't creating a whole new ticketable offense. It's already on file. It's just that this is going underneath its own underneath the animal control section instead of falling underneath that noise ordinance.
Correct.
And the noise ordinance now is the fine for that.
$100.
So it's the same
It's the
fine.
same. It's the
So an
same
officer could write the ticket currently today for the same offense of this dog barking or passing for the
We're
noise.
just improving the language.
Okay.
So that if someone looks it up under animal, correct, they can find everything there, they don't have to go from here, then tie that to noise control.
There is a component that deals with construction noise and other noises within the village, but specifically since we have our own animal control ordinance, we thought it would be best to put it there for a resident to look it up, or if an officer says something, you can reference it through there, it'd be easier to find.
But it would be, just from practical, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a lot more difficult for a resident to understand what the decibel level of something would be versus having a more objective standard here where you can measure what, either 10 minutes of continuous barking, that the dog's barking nonstop for 10 minutes or 30 minutes of intermittent barking. Because I think the situation that had come up in the discussion wouldn't be something that would fall under here unless the dog was left alone unattended for 30 minutes and had been barking, intermittently that entire time. So, certainly, I think, speaking for the board understands that dogs are going to bark. That's just part of having an animal. It's trying to set the subjective standards of, is this dog outside barking continuously for 10 minutes, intermittently for 30, or have two neighbors complaining, and then again, there's still a process involved after that.
And typically, it's only when the party decides not to pay the ticket that it then would be moved up and elevated to go to the court. So typically, most of I can't even recall the time we've taken a case to the court for an animal complaint. So it's rare, but if it does happen, we want to be prepared, just like you said, you want to be prepared on the last instance.
Any additional comments from the board? Ryan or Mike?
No, the only thing that I have, go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, I don't have any further comments. We talked about this topic a few meetings ago, and I couldn't hear everything very well, but I suspect Chief Brown has spoken more about why there was this need, put the officers in a better position to be able to rectify situations and so on and so forth. But I'm fine with the way it's been proposed.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the only thing that I had, and I think I voiced this at the last meeting, it's not enough for me to vote no on this, but as a former dog owner myself, it never failed. As soon as I shut the bathroom door, the dog would start barking. So I'm just wondering if 10 minutes might not be too short, for that first time. Should we consider?
More fiber, Mike, more fiber. We're learning a lot about our friend Mike Shumas.
Right, the water goes down. Anyway, I like that it's black and white. I think it's going to be a whole lot easier for the officers to call. There's nothing to do here, so.
Okay. It is a valid point. I don't know if it makes a difference to give a little bit more leeway and split the difference of 15 and 30. If that, 15 minutes seems like a long time of continuous noise. I don't know how the board feels about that.
We're going to hear all types of excuses.
I know.
And one of those is what it is. The officer has the option to not write the ticket.
Okay.
So we understand.
And the board does always have, you are not tied forever to whatever you decide. So if you decide on one number and that does not appear to be the correct number, you can always change that. that at a later date to adjust, based on what actually happened. So, right now we want to do the best to make a sound judgment, weighing all these interests, but your hands aren't tied forever on it.
Well, 10 minutes of continuous barking, that's a long time for a dog to bark for 10 solid minutes. If these officers are not going to walk up to this house and say, all right, here's your ticket, dog bark for 10 minutes. They're actually going to make contact with the homeowner if that homeowner isn't using the restroom at the time and say, hey, your dog's outside barking. I'm sorry, I'll bring him in. And now problem resolved. They're not going to be issuing tickets, I'm sure of it. So I think the 10 minutes, I don't think that's too short at all. If you think about a dog being timed for 10 minutes right now, continuous barking, that's pretty excessive. So
Okay.
that's my 2 cents.
I appreciate it. Any other comments?
In the language of 2 or more separate residents located within 200 feet of the residence, I think helps. For some of those neighbors, like for instance, Mr. Feltus with his neighbor with a car, there's one neighbor that he tends to be having an issue with. If there's one neighbor that, for whatever reason, it's not just one cranky person.
Right.
Yeah.
It's multiple people in probably a couple directions.
Yeah. Okay, sounds like everybody is satisfied with this. And so if we can bring this back for the next meeting for approval. Thank you all. Next up, what do we have? We're going to go back to item B, wastewater system master plan. Tony or Brad? I'm trying to figure out who's going to talk to us.
So it's done. What we're looking at here is updating and creating a wastewater system master plan. Last time that the sanitary wastewater system was looked at as a whole was back in the 90s when the village was planning on connecting to Fox Metro. At that time, since that time, there have been a lot of additions and changes and subdivisions and other information that's come together. So we'd like to update and create a wastewater system master plan. We want to convert CAD to the GIS, go over the service areas and protections, review future needs, and then that would have an interim presentation given to the board before the report is completed. So basically, we work with EDI to put together a proposal to cover this plan and project.
Okay. Does this also deal with capacity? Will this give us our capacity, like what our whole waste?
That is a loaded question.
But you can
so part of what's included in this is the work with Fox Metro, and they've done some flow monitoring and kind of assessing that. So it's together what we're looking for, and to go back to Fox Metro and say, can you provide this? Because Fox Metro won't clearly say, yes, you have this capacity. What they'll tell you is, we've reserved this amount of capacity in all these areas, is what they'll tell us. But they won't say, what's the capacity left in that sewer or that lift station.
This will tell us, we're going to have how much pitch we have to have on pipes and how big the pipes are and all that for a whole area, not just like a development that wants to come in, right?
Well, Fox Metro, they own all sewers and they have a master plan. It just gets a little convoluted, so I apologize if I'm making it too complicated. But Fox Metro, they basically own all sewers that are 15-inch and greater. We're responsible for anything less. Typically, when you do master planning for sewers, you're looking at your major sewers. So they've done
that aspect of it, but we also understand some developments, some areas that village has looked at for maybe higher capacity needs and that sort of thing, and we'd like to kind of look at some of those areas and say, what if? In terms of, a town center, if that's going to be a larger user, we don't know, or a lot of fast food restaurants along 47, they can tend to be higher water users, so we're just trying to get an idea of what we can and cannot do, but it's a fluid process, and you got to analyze as things come in, but it at least gives you what you're looking for, and part of what you're trying to do too is avoid putting in lift stations. You want as much of it to drain by gravity as possible, so you don't add any more lift stations in places you don't need them. So, did that answer your question?
Yes, more. Is this going to address south of the tracks?
Pardon?
Are we going to be addressing south of the tracks, and what's going to be needed to develop south of the tracks? Because that's been an area that we talked about recently as something that really, when I was representing Newman, we were looking at a lot of the things that would have had gone in down there. And it was a big project, and so of course there was a lot more dollars that would be put to those projects. Are we looking at, from that standpoint, are we looking at what's going to take to develop south of the tracks, or is this not really that kind of thing?
As far as that goes, remember the Copeland's coming in with Newman. That area, we are going to be looking, you're going to have flow monitors, so we're going to have an idea of what is reserved. If you ask Approximate what they've reserved for that area in terms of the existing sanitary sewer system, they're going to tell you 0 because it's all supposed to go west and go down to Newman. Right. So then the village is going to have to say, do I really want that area developed down to the southwest, or would I rather focus my efforts and concentrate on the 47 corridor? So there's going to be some limitations, and I can't predict how you grow, and there's going to be some limitations and ideas to give you some parameters to make decisions on which developments you might want to happen. Does that help?
It helps me, it helps my expectations, yes.
And it would help, it would help us identify, should we start into serious talks with the developer for a town center? We would already have information as to what they would need.
I don't want to promise that we will probably do some average calcs, but if they're larger water users than that, or wastewater users than that, then that would be a problem.
We would know that we wouldn't have the capacity.
That's the kind of the intent of what we would be restricted by. And for me, as far as this goes, it's really grabbing onto your existing system. The part of the purpose of this, you have several lift stations, you have sewers, you have a ton of knowledge in folks, and we have a lot of maps. But putting that all into paper and really creating a plan to care for that system, I think is a pretty good goal out of this, and probably more of a heavier focus on
reviewing our existing system and making sure that we're properly taking care of it and what we need to look forward to in the future for the sanitary sewer system.
Putting together a capital improvement plan basically for at least your lift stations at a minimum, and really grabbing them. And you don't know, these folks know exactly what's going where in terms of the sanitary sewer, who's tributary to each sewer that comes along. So, my lift station dies, who's going to be affected by that? They know that intuitively because they've been doing it for so long. We'd like to kind of get that on a map in GIS format so that the next person comes along, and Brad and Tony want to train the next person. There's that piece in mind. So it's really, I would say the focus of this is stronger to develop where we are now.
That was clear, thank you.
Okay, Michelle, so will it, on the new growth side, will it tell us, okay, here's the infrastructure we have today, roughly what the remaining capacity is in that, and an area, kind of like the area. I'm thinking of what you've done versions of multiple times for sub areas, but we're looking at a larger area to say, okay, the town center question, would we be able to say, okay, the line that's coming out, near Galena, it's got roughly X amount of capacity left. This is the big area it's intended to serve, and measuring by PE, if your town center is going to have this, and this in it, it takes up that much PE of that capacity. So what's left for the rest? Is there enough, not enough for those? I mean, not in great detail, but at the bigger level, will those type of questions be?
What we're trying to do, so we have no flow monitoring, which is how you establish what your capacity is. So we're relying on Fox Metro to work with us, and they've been very, very willing to work with us with some of that. So at key points within the larger interceptor sewers, that's the goal, yes, to have a few places to know, this much left. So however you want to get it there, whichever pieces of the pie, it's yours to decide.
And Jamie talked about south of the tracks, but I think there's the same question, if you will, at the 4788 interchange. Will this give us some guidance as far as with the existing system, what capacity and what could be added? I know at one point when people were talking about expansive growth and higher users, would a new interceptor have to be extended out there, whether it's the Fox Metro system that runs through North Aurora, or how much capacity is in the Wabansi sewer? Will it give us some guidance of that as well?
We can, I think realistically, Fox Metro is probably not going to flow monitor that area because it's so far upstream in the system, so we would rely on what they reserve for capacity. So a 6P per acre, I know we reduced our planning area up there, or we increased the planning area, so the amount we're allowed to flow per the given area reduced, so we could get some idea of how much is allowed per Fox Metro, show you that, maybe map that out somehow so it's a little clearer as people come in. The goal is really just to collect that kind of information and get it all in one spot, so it's not he said, she said, let me look at that document from the 1990s.
Yeah.
So if the developer comes in, you're gonna have a good baseline for them to look at. Their engineers can come to you and say, okay, what's existing? You'll say, this is exactly what we have. You can worry about this. You'll have a great idea of what you can do.
Yes, and they will still need to go talk to Fox Metro, but the goal is to have our ducks in a row so they know where we stand.
Mike or Ryan, either of you have any questions for Michelle or Tony or Brad?
Nothing from mine.
Thank you. Mike?
No, one actually asked a question that I had regarding extension north up to the 47 and 88 area there. I'll reiterate my comments when I maybe looking at some of EPI's other quotes in the previous meeting, that their rates, based on my experiences with that consulting engineering work, are absolutely in line with market rates as far as I'm concerned. They're very fairly priced. So I don't think there are issues.
I think, was it you, Mike, that brought up at the one meeting, you couldn't throw a discount or something like that? Wasn't there a comment made? And I think this came in total cost at $95,099, and I think that the board report says 95 flat. So I'm just gonna go on record and say that there was a $100 discount applied to her quote. So it should be noted. All right, well it's obviously a lot to take in. I want to just get a a consensus of the board that we'd like to move this forward for approval at our next board meeting. I'm getting yeses. Okay. You, Brian and Mike, you agree moving it forward? Yes. Excellent. Thank you. You can put that on the agenda for next meeting for approval. Priority capital projects list, Mr. Eichelberger.
Yes, one of the items the board mentioned a few months ago is a desire to take a look at this, currently on a schedule of twice a year, which I think staff thinks is a great idea, and so hopefully most times there's not a lot of changes proposed or a lot of discussion, but certainly anything that's on it is vitally important. In your package should be a red line version of the existing capital, priority capital projects list. The two suggestions staff are making, one is a update to the municipal at 30 pedestrian crossing on the estimated cost. Again, these are all estimates, from 160,000 to 165 based on the latest information we have. And the second one, which is a more expensive, if you will, is to remove, on here it was called Community Drive, more recently we're suggesting it will be Van Owen Street, I think, from this list. And the primary factors are, this was talking about a full interchange there. IDOT has made it clear, at least at this time, that they would not approve a full intersection, not interchange. And then we also have a developer that is going forward, we hope, that will be putting the right in, right out. So we did not feel this was a project that the village should actively be seeking funding for. Again, this is the priority list, it's not the capital project list, so this project will most likely stay on the regular CIP, but it would not be a priority item when we're meeting with county, state, or federal officials. One of the things that we don't want to have happen is similar to what's going on in Park 47, where we were successful in getting some funds allocated, and we're trying to fight through the approval process. So that is staff's suggestion. We didn't have any other changes or anything else that we thought should be added to the list. So that's what we got.
Yeah, there's not any items really on here for short dollars, are there?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we've got the.
I mean, it just kept going up and up. I was
Right.
like, 165 seems like a bargain for the person. Well, let's discuss it in where we stand on some of these things. So we believe that we have the funds. If we do not get, and I have to follow up with our senator on the 165 for the pedestrian crossing, so I will do that. But I think I don't want to speak for the board, but I got the general consensus from past meetings that I have identified this as enough of a priority that we would push it forward even without. We've obviously gone to engineering and approved that. So we would approve funding it in full if we do not have any legislators give us some dollars. So
that can come through the TIF.
I don't believe it would be TIF. I don't think we would be using TIF money for that.
The current thought process to use existing village funds, not TIF dollars, I believe it would be technically an eligible TIF expense. That would be a board decision at the time.
Okay.
Why
do I believe
why
that?
Why does that thought process change? Before we were talking about this TIF
It's come up as TIF dollars in the past. I think one of the things that some of us on staff struggle with is the economic development value of it. We think it's a vital improvement for the safety. I mean, obviously with our offices here, we see people crossing it way more than we would like. So we do think it's probably the top safety priority right now. Parking 47 a close second. The only difference is I think here maybe it's just because of proximity, we see so many people walking and biking. But we're having difficulty, at least some of us, justifying that while it is certainly an eligible expense, does it meet kind of the intent of the TIF to promote economic development? That's the little bit where we struggle with solidly saying this absolutely is appropriate.
Question. They had that whole thing that we're supposed to comment on, widening of 30 from Dugan to municipal. 47.
The IDOT study.
Right. What we are looking at, is that going to take into account what they potentially might be doing there? So that we're not just kind of making an improvement that's going to be torn apart?
Nobody can predict the future, but moving any further with that project is not funded and it's not in the multi-year program with IDOT. So that would be many years in the future if somebody could actually get it moved into the program. You can't predict it, but since we've made so many improvements to that intersection at the time that we did it to accommodate some future growth, I don't necessarily believe there could be a lot of changes, but it's predicting the future and the amount of traffic on the road right now. So yes, we did anticipate growth in the area when that intersection was built, but it's like anything, you can't say if in 10 years something that's built out there is generating more traffic and you need dual lefts instead of what, that there could be modifications. But generally, I don't believe if everything is as we anticipated that it would require this all being ripped out.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have with the storm sewer system for the east and west side, is there a time frame in the sense that staff would love to see that? I mean, obviously the residents would like to see it accomplished tomorrow, but I think that's the other thing that this lacks is maybe goals.
Well, I mean, that one, I think it's fair to say that, yes, there is a need. It's existed essentially since the village, those neighborhoods were built. And it's a significant dollar item. These estimates are multi-years old, so my guess would be it's probably even higher at this point. There was not a lot of analysis put into it originally, but to answer your question directly there is no identified funding source within the village, revenue structure. Okay. So it would be very difficult for us to put any time frame on it unless we're successful in getting outside dollars. Okay. We don't have a stormwater fee or anything. Some communities do. I'm not even sure it's not overall. It's a funding issue.
The Phase Lane Bridge, why would that not be on the list of this? We know it's something we have to do.
It could be added. I'm trying to remember. I'm looking at the others, Tony, or if anybody remembers it when we talked about that. We looked at adding it, or we talked about waiting for the current study to get a better review, to get a better cost estimate.
So as part of the bridge inspections, we added some additional work by bench to give us some better ideas of cost estimates and different options for that bridge. So we'll have more information.
Yeah, that's probably, when we come back in the next round, that's probably definitely a good one to consider putting on it.
Probably pencil it in, placeholder. Then we come back with dollar amounts.
We'll have a better idea of timing and stuff like that at that time.
I don't know why I feel like months ago, Matt, it was probably in April, maybe it was even March, we talked about that bridge and the dollar amount, roughly in my mind, somewhere around $2 million.
Yeah, I think that was the number we've been batting around based on what I would call a full replacement and getting state dollars.
I believe so. I will tell you, there is a grant that can't apply for it until you're right at the perfect condition. You have to be bad enough to apply, but not too bad to apply. So it's catching some of that in there, but there's always a match that goes along with that for certain. So we'll bring some of that information. Still trying to narrow in on the numbers, I think, is the good first step there.
We talked about before, or I remember from meetings before the election, having engineering, trying to do some engineering ahead of time on stuff. Where are we at on that?
I think that was regarding roads, wasn't that?
A little bit of both. I think generally, we try to anticipate potential funding sources to see if it's worthwhile to do that. I don't know if there's anything on the horizon right now that us, doing phase one or whatever ahead of time. Certainly as part of the road program and I'm not even sure if, I think it wasn't that long ago, it was the latest like call for projects. If I remember right, when the next round would be, and what we would have eligible, or really much we could do to the council mayors.
Can't draw a blank right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it on a regular basis, though. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that we're doing that on right now.
I guess that's what I'm wondering, is that should we be having something that we're
the
planning?
Yeah.
Well, now that we're talking, some of that money that was discussed about for engineering, we did talk about potentially reallocating it for like the municipal and 30 crossing, so that we haven't really moved forward on anything like that yet because we're still analyzing availability of funds for municipal and 30, which would then why it's switched out from TIP.
Thank you.
Okay. The Prairie Street Sugar Grove Parkway realignment, I'm curious, I see the cost there. Was this not addressed with IDOT?
I think at every meeting, anybody from the village has attended, all their public comments, when they go through the Route 47 widening, we bring it up repeatedly, and so far they have continued to say it's not part of the plans, they don't plan to include it.
It's not warranted based on their analysis.
Yes, well, it's, like I said, numerous times we've made this.
Sketched it out.
They are realigning the west part of Prairie to straighten out how it, instead of it, West Prairie comes to 47 at an angle, so part of their project would be to straighten that out, so then there would be more separation between both parts of Prairie, and based on their analysis, that's all they feel it was warranted.
So we're gonna put a 4-lane road in, and you're gonna get people on Prairie that need to go north, and then you're gonna get the folks from Prairie to the east who need to go south, and we're gonna have to abide by signs still that they can't turn left at certain hours, because I assume they're not gonna put a traffic light there, and then a traffic light down 200 yards.
Right.
What a disaster.
And we all commented, it's in the public record, a resident and also a co-worker of Michelle even sketched up a proposal that we submitted of realignment, but it said they said it wasn't warranted, and they drew it up the way they believe it's warranted. And said if the village would like to realign it, that it would be a project at our cost.
Why they're over there tearing up roads.
Is that an issue with water over there too?
Oh, yeah.
Does that still exist, or did they change anything on that?
On what?
The water.
Stormwater?
Stormwater.
Our point.
Well,
we're still working with Trotter, analyzing that. So hopefully in the near future, we can have an update that review with the board.
Obviously, this is a ways out, the municipal extension. But it's on here. As we climb higher in our dollar amounts, I mean, they're on here and.
But if I may, one of the things you brought up earlier, I think, is that, one of the things that's always difficult is, once or twice a year, typically, we'll have contact from whether county, state, or federal officials saying, oh, there's some program out there that I may or may not be able to get money on, that I may or may not be able to allocate any to Sugar Grove, so give me a project. And with literally, typically, no direction whatsoever on dollar amount, at best you get infrastructure or something like that, a very broad category. So one of the things that we always struggle with is to say, well, you know, what do you ask for, even off this list and how much? So there's always a little bit of trying to get some further information. So are we talking about, 165,000 or 370 million? Give us something. But so we try to do on this list is to, as you can see, you have projects at multiple price points, if you will. One of the things that we've certainly recognized recently is that, not that it's easy to get any funding, but obviously it's easier to get smaller amounts than larger amounts. And we really don't have, right now we've got this $165,000 project, a $600,000 one, and then we jump up to $2 million if you do to one side. And it's hard to identify, and certainly if the board can, maybe not tonight, over time, projects, from 50,000 up to, 2 million, like some other projects for consideration. And keep in mind too that, when you look at these projects, you gotta look at it from the perspective of the legislator who may be sponsoring it. And, they want projects that are zero controversy. They want to get behind projects that not only is there not controversy, but there's no public support. I mean, right there, and then like I say, they generally, most cases, they like bricks and mortar infrastructure. One of the things that's unfortunate is for us, I guess it's a double-edged sword, is that a lot of the grants, different programs that you'll see pop out there, when you really start looking into the criteria, a lot of them are directed for areas that are much worse off economically than non-insured growth is general area. So a lot of times we're either not even eligible at all, or if we are eligible, the points are how they rank it and go for things that we don't qualify for. I think even the ongoing, I think Walter, I don't even know if we have a single, whatever census correct, whatever that was, the CDBG grant process. I don't know if we have any area that even qualifies for that. Just because that's based on, I can't remember if that's hope values or income levels or whatever. But anyway, so if you do, like say, one of the things that, and more recently we're trying to figure out, okay, what are good projects that would be, especially if we get this one done, the pedestrian crossing done, what we replace that with on the list?
I just want to make one comment. So the residents that may listen to our board meeting, that at one point we did have the traffic light at Park and 47 on this list. And for the residents, it's not that it's removed and we're not prioritizing it, it's that it's getting direct staff attention, elected officials attention, IDOT attention, and it's being worked on. So Brent, you can update us during board reports, because I know that is on your board report, but just for anybody who's listening, that is why it's not on this list, I assume? That's why you took it off? Yeah.
Well, that would be next if we're done with this one.
Actually, I have a question on the business incubator. Did you ever hear back from that realtor on any of that stuff?
That's another thing to follow up again.
You
know that
who's the
realtor.
fourth tenant?
Well, is there not four anymore?
There's three over here, and then you've got them.
We looked at maybe Wilson too.
Yeah.
So you looked at both buildings.
Right.
So there were four there, wasn't there?
I would assume it's both buildings
I thought
are
we were
there.
taking out some of the signs in there, so.
Okay, can you talk about the traffic light while we're on it, please?
Yeah, so on Friday, President Conan, myself, Tony, who else?
Michelle.
Was that all of us? 'Cause we were
From the village.
People working out of cars and this, that, and the other thing, trying to get a signal on that. And we had a virtual meeting, if you will, with multiple representatives from IDOT District 1 and chief engineer, is that the official title? District engineer.
Director. District 1 director.
Yeah, that's right.
The head director like 30 times in that.
Okay. And then Senator DeWitt facilitated the call. And it was a follow-up to our long-going trying to get the traffic signal on Park 47. Senator DeWitt did reiterate what she told us numerous times that there has been money, funding allocated for that project, and it's the question of getting IDOT approval of it. And so I thought the meeting overall was pretty productive in that the IDOT did, we owe them a resubmittal, and what we did get on the call was an acknowledgement that there is within the approval process engineering judgment, that if you don't meet every criteria, I think there's 8 on this project from memory or something, if you don't meet every one exactly, that they can use their judgment based on the totality of the circumstances and eventually issue a permit. So I believe that Tony and or Michelle is going to be doing a follow-up call with IDOT to say, okay, here's what we've got ready to go to submit. Is this what you need? Is there anything additional? So hopefully, if not this week, next week, we're able to get that call and get that submitted back off to IDOT. Hopefully, we get good news from that. I don't know.
I was just looking to see if I missed, because I thought the director said he would email. Oh, that was about a different thing.
Yeah, I can mention that too.
Okay.
Yes, part of that same meeting, we did have the opportunity to say, hey, just thought we'd check in. Not that we think we'd be done with it. But the permit request for Prairie Grove comments for the right and right out on 47, and the director said that he wasn't aware of it, which makes sense. It's only been in a couple of weeks, but that he would follow up to make sure that it was in their system and what the status of it was, and he'd get back to us.
And he didn't get back to me.
I have not.
That's why I was looking. Okay.
But so overall, I thought it was a good meeting. So
Yeah, I think so. They made it sound like their doors are always open to us. So we'll see as we constantly make contact with all of our IDOT concerns. So, does anybody want to address as we climb this ladder? Obviously, Public Safety Center, Police Department, with a cost of $15 million. I think we're actively trying to work to that end for a lot less, as maybe a temporary. This would be a long-term permanent situation, but trying to get a temporary fix in place first. Widening 47 from Wabansie to Green. Is that really something that's going to fall on us? I mean, why is that here?
that's part of the what will likely be necessary to develop up at 8847. And as we know, part of all the infrastructure costs up there between the various utilities and the road projects is a big hurdle for development up there. So that's why that is included. That's one of the pieces.
Is it not part of their master plan to have that? A 4-lane road all the way?
Well, again, you get back to maybe on the master plan, but that doesn't mean they are allocated funding to do it themselves or ever will.
I don't know that we're going to, it's just a
Well,
development
no,
cost.
Not listed in any of their
Okay.
Based on prior discussions on development out there, I'm looking at you, Tony, I believe it's been relatively clear that most proposed developments or concepts in the past, I had said this is going to be required. Is that a fair
Right, we
statement?
did, the phase 1 for 4788 included this section of road, but all that was funded was the interchange. So currently, it's not in their program, and those improvements on 47 that were identified, if there was development in that area near the interchange, that would be the type of improvements that IDOT would be expecting to be completed by the development.
So not only do we have the $31 million, we have the $18 million of road work, $31 million of water and sewer improvement, utility.
Plus or minus a couple million dollars.
I
I mean, not to you, but it's
Jumping
so hard
at that point.
to do cost estimates, and then, you get back to that, there's not really a value in, spending the time and effort to try to accurately update it, if you don't know exactly what it's going to look like anyway.
Well, overall, the Metro on here as well, and with a nice price tag. But overall, it's good for all of us to have this kind of in the back of our minds of the projects that we foresee, the staff foresees us needing to do.
Does the phase one of that expire at any time, or is that something that we at least have out and stay done?
Yes, it does, because the information becomes outdated. So in other words, when we do traffic projections, et cetera, and they say, okay, project to 2030. So now if they opened up the book and took a look and said, no, we want 20 years of traffic projections, project to 2041 now. And
Does anyone have any comments or questions on the capital projects list? Okay. Thank you, Brent. Staff report. While we're on you, Brent.
Those actually were the two items I wanted to mention, so unless somebody has any other questions, that would be my report.
All right. Look at that.
Right there.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that was one other one that's coming on your report. Meeting, or Walter's meeting we had yesterday. I don't know if you talked about that or not.
Did I have a meeting yesterday?
Wasn't that yesterday?
Oh, yeah. You can share. That's fine.
So, Jen Walter and I met with the executive director, I believe, apparently terrible titles tonight, of the Downers Grove EDC, who you had met with previously, to talk about, and the gentleman who's in that role previously worked in Oswego 10 plus years ago, and by all accounts was very successful there, and very successful in over Downers Grove. This was a follow-up meeting to talk about, okay, if we want to expand the economic development effort in Sugar Grove, what exactly would that look like? And the conversation centered on a full-time person dedicated toward economic development, kind of what that role would be, what the, what would they need to be successful? Essentially, obviously you got to find the right person is the biggest thing, but being on the same page with the board and the community as far as what everybody's looking for. And then we talked quite a bit about what the actual, what they would do, so to speak. And then I think it was pretty clear we're all on the same page that they would need some additional staff assistance, most likely a part-time person. As an additional new hire that really isn't anybody on staff now that has the time to dedicate to that. And then, we talked a fair amount about a realistic budget for, parking materials and going to, different trade shows and that type of thing. So I thought that was a very good conversation. So what we're doing right now is Matt is taking the information I shared with him to kind of start sketching out what the budget would look like in different ways the village could potentially fund that. Allison is working on putting together a draft job description, which will be key to it. So those are kind of the two main action items we're doing right now.
Does anybody have any questions for us that we could answer?
I'll do that in the house. How's that different from what the EDC originally was?
I would say the difference I would feel would be a better focus on what exactly the person is intending to go after, and I think the model is similar. And I think it really comes down to finding the right person for where we're at today.
I didn't know it was a woman.
And it would be full-time. You can't do it.
Well, no, Jamie's talking about doing like 15 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, when we first started EDC, we had a full-time director and an assistant.
Yeah, and then I think at least what where the discussion was heading, I believe this is accurate, and back then it was a separate economic development corporation, and the person in that role answered to that corporation board. What we were talking about yesterday would be a village position, that would not be part of a separate public-private partnership. And the concept that was at least thrown out there was to keep the currently active EDC members involved, and maybe whether it's not a separate corporation, it may be a commission of the village or an ad hoc committee or something, but certainly keep them active, but it would really be.
I mean, we'd have to attend that EDC meeting as it currently stands today, and like many boards, it's made up of professionals that have full-time jobs, and they're there as counsel, and they report on at what's going on with their business, but we truly do not have any active person other than us they're out there working on behalf of the village to create opportunities and share what we have. And I feel like that's what the village has been missing for all these years is if the wait and see approach is not working. And so this is truly an active role that person is accountable to the village board, to staff, versus a separate entity that we can manage, so to speak. Because the other option, as proposed, is to make a substantial contribution on behalf of the village to the EDC and let the EDC manage that person. If we're going to make a substantial contribution, we want to manage that person. So,
I don't disagree with it. I just want to
yeah. Okay. Thank you. Matt is not here. Does anybody have any questions on this board report that maybe Brent could answer? If you had anything? No? Okay. Because he was probably like, I can't.
Oh yeah, I just hear that.
We got to update Walter's. I just noticed it. I didn't notice it earlier. Walter, look at the board report. I call myself that, so it's okay.
Walter's coming back in time. I'll be sending his report to.
He's got an old template he's using. That's all right. No, they haven't, because I have noticed. Walter, I take no personal offense, but you're up.
Yeah. No, a new library building. She emailed me with a 10-year-old report.
That's impossible. I made damn sure that wasn't going to happen. And it happened. Okay. Sorry.
Nope, you're fine.
Is it my fault?
It is your turn.
The only highlight I have is I want to refer to the email I sent this morning to the board.
Yeah.
Or actually, this afternoon. CD staff, we met with the new owner of Sugar Grove Center, Lot 17, and that is the vacant space where the inline building ends. So it's everything north of LA Tan. We've been waiting for him for the better part of this year to make his application for final PUD approval in order to get his building permit. He showed up yesterday, and he's very anxious and he's ready to go, and he wants to get under construction as soon as possible. We've placed him. Fortunately, we have a special meeting of the Plan Commission tomorrow night for something else, so we added it to the agenda. And we expect that we'll get a positive recommendation from the Plan Commission to move it on to the village board. The issue is, when you look at the calendar, the next village board meeting is October 5th. So that would be the normal meeting at which it would be presented for discussion and then final approval 2 weeks later on the 19th. That effectively moves the start of construction practically into November. And while it's not a death sentence for construction, because obviously there's work that can be accomplished, it does make winterizing the building very difficult. And he has 3 tenant spaces ready to go. So it's not a situation where you're gonna build a building spec and then hope somebody moves in, he's got 3 tenants ready to go. So what I'm suggesting is we could have a meeting on the 5th where we could approve it if you're so inclined, or something really radical, do a special meeting on September 28th and approve it. And then, because we will be, I expect that the building permit will be ready to be issued by then, because we also have the building permit in the office. So it's our chance to expedite this. And the other thing I can't overemphasize enough is, in this particular case, the final PUD approval is, it's basically a rubber stamp process, because all the improvements are in, the parking lot's in, the landscaping's in, the outdoor illumination, the utilities are in place, the building fits in the footprint that was left on the plan. It's really ready to go.
What about the parking lot? Because I noticed in that section of in front of that vacant lot, there's a lot of potholes. In that, is that their responsibility?
Yes, and if they weren't out there today, they'll be out there this week, because he and I had a conversation prior to our meeting yesterday about fixing the potholes, and he's going to take care of that.
And then the plan that you sent us with the outdoor patio, is all of that being constructed at the same time?
And the brick color is saying it's all as if it were just a continuation of what's already there.
Well, as soon as they can get it, considering the existing buildings are already 15 years old.
But I mean, that's the intent of
Yeah,
it.
Yeah. The only thing is, I won't know my 28th schedule until maybe later tomorrow night, so I don't know that. I don't know about.
I feel we put on the 5th as discussion.
For approval. Okay, I'm fine with that. Does anybody else feel instead of having a special board meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does, I don't mean
No.
I'm not one for extra meetings, but if it's possible to find a special meeting date that works, does that help the petitioner? I mean, you're not stuck on Tuesdays, I know that's kind of what you always think of, but you're not stuck on a meeting in the evenings either.
It sounds like it could be a 5-minute meeting. I mean, unless there's major discussion, but it sounds like it's a.
Well, you still got to do it, because it mobilizes and everything else.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you're slowing them down much. I'm just trying to pull my
No,
calendar.
the 5th still,
It's 2 weeks, yeah.
I mean, we're still, 3 or 4 weeks ahead of schedule if we can be on the 5th and approve it on the 5th.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's what we do. Thank you. What did you say? Oh, it was a whisper. I'm sorry.
I saw the sign that he had on his proposal today.
Oh. Chief Rollins.
Just a reminder, on Thursday from 9 to 11, House Representatives Jeff Becker and Keith Wheeler will be here for the prescription drug drop-off program that they're partnering with us. If you're interested in meeting with them or talking to them on whatever initiatives, it might be a great opportunity. But I'll be pushing my $15 million police department, so get behind me.
I'll be right there with you, Chief. I think we have a couple of meetings that we're on together that day. We'll just tell them we're unavailable because we're out there trying to get a police department. I know this is going to seem like a silly question maybe, or I just don't know the answer to it, but obviously this is prescription drug or whatever kind of drug. What about folks that have needles? They're either diabetic or, I mean, I don't know what the best solution is or where do you even go for that to drop those?
So typically they don't, usually it's back at the doctor's office or a hospital that's accepting them.
Okay.
And there's a company like Stericycle and a couple others that they prescribe that they do that do allow it to be put into their system, but I know they typically try to stay away from it because it's handled by, we will take the material that we collect over the next 2 or all our prescriptions, it makes its way into a warehouse that the DEA controls, and there will be an actual destruction of it, so it gets handled, and so they don't want, and part of it is they don't want to touch it, so, that part of it, so I think they're all concerned on that. I know we always refer them to the hospitals,
Okay.
but I'll try to get something out, maybe we can push something out with the material that goes with this. The DEA program now is taking the vape pens and they are doing liquids, where before they were not doing liquids.
Okay.
But it is the needles people are concerned.
Chief, thanks for the sign.
Oh, you're welcome.
Socked it up today.
Actually, no.
Actually, looks nice.
How did it go? How did it go with the stealth mode?
It said thank you.
Well,
It said my speed, and it said thank you. And
How
by
was
way,
the stealth mode on
the drug destruction?
Yeah.
One of the main companies actually is out of Sugar Grove.
That's nice to know. I'm just curious, the stealth mode on Snow Street, where there are a lot of offenders.
Good.
Yeah.
And the collected data is a couple hours before the meeting, and everyone cars in the 40s, majority of the cars are within the speed limit of the 85% tile, which is what's normal. So we're not seeing any anomalies yet. Specifically, it captures both directions. So even though you might see it if you're heading westbound, the cars that are heading eastbound don't see the front of it, it doesn't illuminate, but it still tracks their speed. Right now, the speeds that are going opposite direction are within or a little close to the speed limit. So we're not seeing a problem in the 200 block of Snow Street. It's harder to push it a little bit further south because it changes because of the school zone. So this is the best place for us to kind of put it mid-stretch in between the lawn, between Main Street and municipal. So right now, I'm with, we're keeping Jamie's kids off the road.
Yeah, my kids are visiting, so it should be good.
Say, will you get higher speeds now that it's live? Trying to see how fast they're going.
Yeah, it's been a lot, it's been displaying since Tuesday last week, and we're not seeing that. I think that, like I said.
Well, it hasn't been displaying since it just started displaying today.
Well, it was down for a while, and then displaying since Tuesday last week, and then there was a battery malfunction, so I had to change the battery, so we lost the day.
Super stealth.
Super stealth. Yeah.
How fast are you going? You blew up the battery.
I was out of town, don't blame me.
Thanks, Chief. Anybody have any questions? No? Chief? Tony?
Yes, happy to report that they've started painting the Public Works facility. Looks great.
Looks great or looks gray? Because I drove by it today and I was like, Brad, what happened to the color?
That's not what she told me, Brad.
Different expletives.
That looked great.
Looks great.
Great with a T.
Yes.
It's hard to tell what you're saying with the mask on.
Well, when you see one side completely painted, it looks white.
It's like white to me.
If you see it,
It's like a wall in your house for telling us why every day it looks a different color.
Depends on which way the sun is shining.
so I'm happy to report that there's progress being made. We did have 2 water main breaks, one on September 10th. That was Whispering Oaks Lane, and that is in an area where the water main is being engineered to be replaced. We had another one September 12th on Joy Court. It is an area that we may look at the water main, but staff was able to repair both of these with stainless steel repair. That's all I have.
Well, on the one item that we just have to thank your staff, as I spoke to them one time about the last item, the staff getting of 10,665 feet of sanitary sewer line. God bless them. Thank them for their services. The overall thing that I just want to point out to everyone that I've read in all their staff reports is the overwhelming amount of training that is happening. One, within the police department, Matt, had some things that he's going to. The board is attending. There's certain members that are able to attend IML, and so very proud of the fact that continuing education is happening on all levels here at the village and improving staff at all times. So thank you to all of you for what you do. We appreciate it very much.
Well, on behalf of staff, thank you all for supporting and keeping on your budget to do that.
We will continue to do that. Trustee reports. Trustee Bonnie.
I have a meeting next week with Chief Perkins to discuss some options in person meeting. So looking forward to that. And I'll be reaching out to the rest of the board about the next couple of days, just make sure we're all on the same page before the meeting. Other than that, that's it.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing if you guys can come to some sort of meeting of the minds that works.
We're rolling for
Trustee Herron.
Last night, our town center committee met and Linda Knapp presented a slide deck of our streamlined vision of each of the members created a storyboard or a picture board of our vision for a town center. And Linda Knapp did a fantastic job of streamlining a lot of information into a very well organized, easy to follow, step-by-step representation of our vision. Draft. And there's draft all over it because it is still a work in progress. I think she did a fantastic job, and I think that there are some tweaks that we can make. But I think that we're really heading down the right path. We had a couple of residents in attendance, and so we hit them up for feedback, and I think they concurred that a lot of what they saw in the presentation is exactly what they would look for in Sugar Grove moving forward. They moved here, some of the things that they said, they moved here for the small town feel, the community aspect of it, and what was presented isn't too overwhelming to make it not a small town. It is still being presented as such, just with more community amenities. And so I think that we took a big step to be closer to having something to present to developers. Also, I attended virtually the Kingdom School Board meeting. A lot of the more interesting topics were during the public comments.
Thank you.
There's a lot of talk about standard-based rating and how effective that is, and some different opinions on that moving forward. Still, a lot of folks showing up with taking issue with masks in the school. And then there were some comments on some of the social justice curriculum that's being presented to students. Some of the standards and some of the suggested reading were in question. So I would just say that it might be worth taking a look on the standard-based rating and then the social justice aspect. And that's all I have.
I'd be curious. I don't know if you're the right person to stand up and be like, excuse me, on our behalf, but I am curious, with their enrollment numbers declining, do they do like an interview, like an exit interview, if you will, like why are you leaving the school district and going to private school? Is it COVID? Is it standard-based grading? Where, to be able to have to provide feedback, but it seems like our numbers are declining within the school district, and whether they equate that to one thing or another.
Yeah, I think we get a report every year, and I think it's been since 2008 or 2009, where they reached their peak of 4,800 students, and now it's down to 4,300 students.
I think that when you were saying that, what popped into my mind was, I think for the past 10 plus years after that peak, it wasn't people leaving the district, if you will, to go to private school. It appeared that it was just birth rate and people moving in. So it'd be interesting to know if it's still that trend, or if there has been something new, if you will, where it's not the, the kind of what's always happened. It's something different. I don't know the answer to that.
I know there was a push last year for homeschooling because of, or private schooling because of the hybrid schedule. I don't think that some parents found it rigorous enough. There was some pullout because of the masks, some because of safety. So there are a variety of reasons that people pulled out and did homeschool or did go to private schools. At my school, most of those students came back. There were some withdrawals this year, but most of the students at least that I am aware of came back. But they are still declining overall, the overall.
And I wonder if there's a correlation between the middle school to the high school drop. Not just overall, but a drop.
Yeah, I just know from personal experience that there's, I know people who were at Carter and then went to private school for high school.
But that's been the case for 20 years I've worked here. When they show their chart, if you look at last year, and their chart will be like, okay, how many 8th graders in the school whole system and how many freshmen? I think that's always the big, like a drop. I can't remember that. I want to say the numbers typically are 30 to 40. It goes down because kids go to private school.
I just wonder if there's a correlation because they weren't always doing standard-based grading.
Right, yeah,
so
I have no
there's
idea
Common
if those
Core.
numbers have increased.
Yeah. Well, that's for them to let us know. Thank you for that. Heidi?
I don't
Okay, thank you. Trustee White?
When I am all this weekend, learn something.
Well, it sounds like your Friday's on Thursday, so maybe we can put our minds together after and kind of share what happened. We'll do that at a board meeting. That's great. That's great. Enjoy. Learn some stuff. Find some legislators and reach into their pockets. That's the goal. Okay. Trustee Walter.
Board boil update. There's a meeting October 21st. The past couple of meetings have not had too much to talk about. Not too much planning going on yet for 2022, but nothing really to report there. And just to piggyback off of Sean, I did attend the school board meeting, last school board meeting, and did provide public comment on two topics that a lot of neighbors and residents always just talk about. And I felt it was needed to be a voice for those that have spoken to me about the topics, and they were around the standard-based grading. And Trustee Lendy also had personal experience she shared as well. And then also with kind of social justice, political ideology, a lot of the training that's going on, and other topics that are being brought into the district and districts nationwide. So I did speak on those. The good thing is, based on mine and Heidi's comments on standard-based grading, while there is some things going on in the background, questionnaires to students and so on and so forth, they did agree to add it to their future agenda topics to discuss. So that was positive that they will be adding that in the future. Other than that, I don't have any other comments.
Did they give you, Ryan, a time, a schedule as to when they might add that to their agenda, or just kind of like, we'll touch upon that at some point?
Not yet. I haven't had communications with that meeting, with Superintendent Leland, and we exchanged some emails, follow-up questions, and make it sound like quite a few things are in the works. I've followed up with some folks that I would think that would know, such as students and teachers, that these things are in the works, and they have not seen any information or their feedback they requested yet. So I guess it's something that I'm going to keep personally as a parent of 3 children in the district and just representing a lot of people. I will stay in touch with the district administration and board.
Excellent, thank you for the update. Trustee Shomas?
Hi there. The Park District met last night. I was not able to attend that meeting. Since they don't offer virtual action right now for me, I did get a chance to reach out to them to let them know that I would be in attendance, but I will try to reach out to a couple of key individuals there. I did not review the agenda ahead of time. It was kind of the last minute thing that kind of popped up with the family here. Forest Reserve Commission met September 14th. Did someone try to interject it? I heard it.
No? That's just in your head.
Well, it's no longer required for the Wastewater. So the Forest Reserve Commission met on September 14th. I attended that meeting via live stream. The discussions involved making updates their mandated report policy, extending an agreement with the Knights of Columbus, maintain and provide security at the grotto in Gunnar Anderson Forest Reserve, extending the contract with waste management, partnering with the Geneva Park District for use of Fabian Forest Reserve for seasonal soccer fields, paving at the Natural Resource Management facility located in Mill Creek, and authorizing an intergovernmental easement agreement with Kingsbury Grove and the Countryside Fire District. The Aurora Area Convention Center meeting is due to meet on Thursday, the 23rd at Apple Barnsley. Again, that's an in-person meeting, depending on the results of some testing I get back from a couple other members of my family. We don't know if I'm going to be able to be in attendance for that in person. I'm assuming everything's going to come back fine and clean. I'm taking extra precautions at this point in time. And that's it for mine.
Well, that's good. Piggybacking on you a little bit, I received an email, and I will be sitting down with Madam Chair Perot on the first week of October. So to get in front of the county is a great opportunity in light of the fact that we have a bridge that we're trying to get across, and so I will be bringing that up. And anything else that you all think needs the attention of the chairwoman, please let me know, because I will bring it to her attention. Go ahead.
If you would like me to attend that meeting with you, I can.
Okay. I'll wait to see. I responded back, thank you. I'll wait and see what the definitive date is, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Personal thanks to Michelle and EEI for hosting myself and Brent and your hospitality at the golf outing on Friday. It was a nice way to spend some time with Senator DeWitt, and I got to play with Pete Waller, so that was nice. And it was just a great event, and so I appreciate that. I know Brent does as well. I don't want to speak for you, but I know you're appreciative of all that stuff. A reminder to the community that we have Food Truck Friday this Friday from 4:30 to 7. And Saturday this week is the last farmer's market of the season. So if anybody's trying to get out to get their last bits of vegetables, that is the time. Or whatever. I don't know if the fudge lady will be there, but that's good stuff too. Just on the record. Also adding to your comments regarding Linden Ave, I mean, she basically took all of that information and she organized it and put it in such a nice, concise way to understand. And I'm so grateful because it's overwhelming when you have all those folks at the committee with different thoughts and concepts, and she put it together on paper for everybody to be able to kind of pick it apart now and say and improve on what they wanted to do. I wanted to give a shout out to Public Works and the 50/50 program. For anyone who noticed my sidewalk, I did contribute in the village-wide 50/50 program for sidewalks, and I was able to replace 3 squares and do some jacking in one area. And they did a phenomenal job. It's better than I would have ever imagined, and I think I told Brad the lifting process, I was worried that I was going to have these huge holes, and I'd seen other sidewalks done, and the epoxy or whatever coming out. I'm like, this is going to be a mess. I said to Tony, do I really want to monkey with that one little area, or leave it alone? And you would never know. And it looks amazing. I got to get the contact and maybe have the rest of my personal sidewalks lifted up to my door. So, but for any of those residents out there that they don't necessarily meet the criteria for a replacement and they want to partner with the village, it's a great opportunity to do that. So, thank you. And that concludes my report. So we are all good. We had a great meeting. I appreciate everybody's time. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a first on Trustee White and a second on Trustee Heron. Roll call, please.
Trustee White.
Aye.
Trustee Harris.
Aye.
Trustee Bonnie.
Aye.
Trustee Lundy.
Aye.
Trustee Shomas.
Aye.
Trustee Walter.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.